at my PowerPoint. See, recording in progress. That's why you got it. Otherwise, will not. All right, so you will prompt to recording in progress. So you have to click got it in order for you to stay. If you, are you able to see my screen right now?
Yes.
Good. So in my screen, there's a website. It's called Power Politics. This is Zeke, Power Politics. He is a constitution instructor, teacher, and a trainer. In his website, it gives you a background about what he teach, about what constitution mean to you, and about government and sovereignty for you and how to protect yourself. So I'm very grateful, invited Zeke to come. So Zeke is a paralegal in the past, now is solely working to help people who needed support, understand your legal rights under the Constitution. Do not let the court or lawyers intimidate you. And that's the reason I am inviting Zeke for help. I encounter a lot of landlord issues, and I realized that the Chinese and the Asian community may be having problems learning about the very basic law to protect your landlord rights, responsibilities, how to understand your contract with your tenants. So much for introduction. And if any of you do not understand some of the meanings, please make note at the end, then we can have some discussions or maybe case studies. And I want to introduce myself. As you see my picture there, I am Ellen. I am the Ellen as a social worker that I volunteer in here today, part of the community supporting people who needed help. So I am here as a volunteer and continue to support people. One of the issues that I personally facing, as you can see in here, United San Francisco Freedom Alliance, we have so many government employees get fired by the mayor, the labor relations director, and the human resources director. So about more than 2,000 government employees get fired in San Francisco. This is a website that we help people to understand and how we fight in court, and hopefully the court will turn around and we hire all the people get terminated. And so far, I am one of the terminated employees for the government, but that does not mean I'm going to back down or not saying anything. So, okay, Zeke, it's your turn now.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you end your screen sharing, and I'll share my screen?
Okay, how do I end my screen share? Let me see.
Right at the top, maybe.
How do I end the share? I'll stop sharing. Okay, I did.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll share my screen. So I want to thank everybody for being here. If you do have any questions, you can, down at the bottom, you can go and there's the it's reactions down there, and you can raise your hand to bring up something. I'm not sure how to do it on the telephone, but you can just interrupt. Okay, so thank you for coming. My name is Zeke Layman. I have the powerpolitics.com. That's my website. I've had it since 1997, but I don't really work it much, but maybe we'll start getting it going here. So a little about me. In 1976, I joined the Libertarian Party, and then I was a state delegate and a national delegate in 78 and 80. And then also in 1979, I had a scholarship from the Libertarian Party that I went to Chico State. And that's where I'm at now, in Chico, just north of Sacramento. So in 1982, I became a constitutional patriot. with my parents at the time, and we studied the history of law and money. And we started a group called the Roger Sherman Society. Roger Sherman was the judge at the time of the framing of our country, and he signed all 5 of the documents. He was good friends with Jefferson and Washington, and he was a judge, and he wrote a really good dissertation about money that very few people, it's 3 pages, but no one really understands it the way he explained it. And it's very simple, but it's really good. It's called an inquiry into the evils of a fluctuating medium of exchange. So when we talk about money, we'll get into that. So I took a common law school in Sacramento in 1982. And then I began giving seminars and chairing meetings, and then writing legal briefs and defending mostly traffic tickets and criminal law, which is just traffic and things like that. Nothing big. I wasn't really a criminal, but we have to study these things. I got a paralegal certificate in 1983. And in 1984, I found Jesus, and I began learning and understanding equity law. And from 1983 to 1999, I was started a moving business with a friend of mine. And while we were moving furniture without a license, he got charged, and we ended up going to court 84 times, just constantly for 2 years. But we held out, and they dropped it, because what they do is they make it so they wear you down. But we wore them down. So it's really hard to, it's tough to hang in there. But when you do, then you can beat them. And so I've been doing in-depth personal studying for 4 to 6 hours a day in the research in law library all this time while we were moving furniture. And then I started in 1999, the Equity Center, is a legal clinic. Self-help for people who wanted to learn how to do their own cases. And then I helped them do forms and analyze their court cases, which is what we're going to be doing here too. And then later in 2004 to up till now, I've been working specifically on the writ of mandamus, still working on traffic tickets, doing mortgages, and recently more unlawful detainers and deeds and family law. And with a master group here in Sacramento, we meet I'm not there anymore, but just up north, but we meet every Sunday. And these guys are really sharp, and they're into unlawful detainer. And also one guy is doing real good with debt collecting, because see, a debt collector, if they try to collect from you, it doesn't matter if you owe the money or not. See, they can't call you and ask you for the money, and they can't collect the money for someone else. They can, they can't. It's a business that's illegal, or they can't really do it. So when you understand that, then we learn how. And this guy's won 33 cases in a row. But one of the strategies that we've always used, that I've seen work, is that because we learn the law and the procedures, this gives us the advantage, a huge advantage, to when we go talk to the other side and their lawyers, because you know how expensive lawyers are. $500 or $600 an hour they start now. And when we get up against these corporate lawyers that are big time, and they're making $8,000 and $1,000 an hour, and they go, they just know they're gonna crush us, because we're not even lawyers. But we get into the game, and then we do discovery, and then we make them spend time. And so then after 4 or 5 hours of discovery, they're costing their client, $500 an hour. It's already $1,000, $1,500. And we go, we're just getting started. By the time we end up losing to you, you'll be charging your client $20,000, but just tell your client to pay us $5,000, and everyone will save. And so it's a big leveraging, knowing and understanding how to file a complaint, what the process is, what discovery is, and how to proceed. So the knowledge is the power. And so I enjoy studying the Bible. I like legal analysis, and I like teaching the history of the Constitution and the common law and about money, because I know a lot of people don't really understand money, even though they think, they always say, you know, follow the money, but really it's deeper than that. Okay, so this is a chart, and you saw it behind me earlier, that my dad did in 1984. And you see the Republic and the democracy, and you see two sides, and we have this two-sided judicial system too, and everything's two-sided, and you realize that, and we're learning that, and as the truth of what's really happening is coming out, and but the newspapers aren't telling everybody, but it's becoming obvious, because when you just look at Biden and what he did, and Trump and what he's done, and it's splitting the country, and we're realizing that there's the people who trust in God and believe in God and fear God versus the ones that don't. And so now it's really becoming a spiritual battle, you know, between those who believe and those who don't believe, because the ones that don't believe really believe in Satan, and that's the two sides. You got freedom and you got slavery. So the choice is ours if we take action. And so we find that by taking the action in the court, we can at least expose what's going on. So in the court, it's words. And I know it's difficult when you have to translate, because it's even difficult in English, because the words in court mean different than words on the street in English. So when you understand these words, and the more definitions that you gain, and you see how the word means both sides, and they use the word to persuade people, and the words are very important. That's what I want to say. And that I'm not a lawyer, so I don't give legal advice, and all my statements are my own opinion. And I encourage each one of you to do your own research and use any information you obtain to your own benefit. So we use whatever we learn, we do it for our benefit. There's over 160 different areas of law. And this is why lawyers only focus on one or two areas and only practice in those, because there's general principles that you need to understand, but different areas of law use different words, and they do different procedures. So they have to be a specialist. The term common law has various meanings. The term common law has various meanings depending on the context. Again, context, that's an important word. Generally speaking, we can view the common law as those rules that are to be followed by the courts. Okay, and a court is a place where issues are resolved. So issues are basically disagreements that need to be settled, that need to be resolved. So we go to court, we have two sides, we determine what the issues are, and then we determine which is the result and what should happen. So these court rules and the procedures, they're made so that the hearings can be logical, reasonable, and fair. So they're designed to have a fair hearing. But if the rules are not followed, which is a lot, almost all the time. What you want? What's that? Okay, if the rules aren't followed, then many times they're not, and an illogical and unreasonable and unfair conclusion may result. And it's very frustrating. So the court procedures, we have to follow them and the rules, because very few times do the lawyers follow the rules. And if you don't hold them to the rules, then they get what they want or they don't. And there is corruption in the court too. We have to realize that a lot of the lawyers and the judges are corrupt. So it's very hard and frustrating. So we have the common law, and some people like to think that the jury trial is what common law is, and that's part of it. There's common law marriages, that's part of it, but there's all different areas of under common law. And administrative law is one of those, and constitutional law is one of those. So all these different areas of law, administrative, constitution, and common law, even though they're different, they also interact and are used, can be used together. Now there's a big bar, a separation between criminal law and civil law. And that's been from the beginning, basically foundational, that criminal law is separate than civil law. And that's why most criminal lawyers are just criminal lawyers, but some of them do civil law, and some civil law attorneys do criminal law, but they tend to stay in their own area. But there's also what's called special proceeding or summary proceedings, which is where they combined these two. They were always supposed to be separate, but they combined them. So we have to realize how that procedure works in order to see how they are using it against us. And then we see how we can use it against them. So it's we have to learn to understand these different ways in which it works. Okay, and the way that it works is by these words. And the words from the dictionary are we want to look at words from the law dictionary. And then we also have to look at the words from the English dictionary, because sometimes they use the law definition, sometimes they use the English definition. Depends on what the arguments are and how the process is being unfolded. Okay, so I just put down a number of these words here that people can go look up, because I like to look up every word. My dictionary is pretty worn out. In fact, I wore one out and I'm on the second one. And there's different law dictionaries, and the past ones have better definitions. The newer ones are more corporation definitions. Definitions are changing, and that's good to know, because they're changing the words, they're changing the meanings of the words, and it's a really dangerous thing that's happening in our society with the education and all of these. It comes from the understanding of the words. So it's good to have old dictionaries and look up the words and see what they mean, and they have different meanings in different contexts. So I picked a few in the white here. I got the justice and the agreement and the presumption. And so we'll start with the presumption. So a presumption of law is a legal inference that must be made in light of certain facts. So it's a rule of law that permits a court to assume a fact is true without any evidence until there is a certain weight of evidence which rebuts or outweighs that presumption. So in law, they make presumptions all the time, but every presumption at law is rebuttable. That means you can rebut it. So when you go to court, a lot of presumptions are made. Oh, judge, you're presuming, everyone's presuming that, the defendant is a poor person, or their tenant is a poor person. That's just kind of a presumption sometimes. And then you can bring it up and rebut it and say, well, it's not true that is the case. And we have a little bit of evidence here to show that. And so then the judge can go, oh, yeah, okay, well, we thought basically we always think that they're poor, but now you've rebutted that presumption. So now we don't look at it that way, and then we can proceed under those terms. So every presumption at law is rebuttable. A rebuttable presumption will either impose a burden of production. That means if you claim that to rebut it, you have to produce, requiring the disadvantage to produce some evidence to the contrary. Like I just said, here's the evidence. Or there are some burdens of proof that requiring the disadvantage to show the presumption is wrong. Say, so sometimes the presumption is, yeah, could be totally wrong, but not necessarily. But in this situation, we don't want to make that presumption, or in this situation, we can't make that presumption. It's totally wrong. Okay, so presumptions are used to relieve a party from having to actually prove the truth of the fact being presumed. So this is another thing. People say in an accusation, they make an accusation that something's true, and then the court presumes it's true. So then the other side has to rebut that presumption. So we know that you can rebut a lot of these presumptions. Now, this presumption, when it came to criminal law, it's an interesting thing because they presumed that the person was guilty of the crime. Oh, the guy said you did it. Well, that's a presumption. He didn't prove you did it. It's a presumption. So then before they had these the Bill of Rights, the defendant had to prove he didn't do it. But that's way too hard of a burden. You can't presume that the person did it. So that's why they said, no, we have to presume he's innocent. We can't presume he's guilty because then he'd have to rebut that presumption, and you can't do it. Very hard. You'd have to prove you're innocent. A lot of times you're not guilty, but you just can't prove you're innocent. So this is what in criminal law, the presumption is that you're innocent until proven guilty. But in civil law, these rebuttable presumptions are everywhere. So we want to be aware of them, understand them, and we know that most presumptions are rebuttable, meaning that they are rejected if proven to be false or at least thrown into sufficient doubt by the evidence. Okay, so this is an important word to know, and how the presumption of law works and how it's rebutted. Every presumption at law is rebutted. Every accusation in a complaint is rebuttable because it's just a presumption. You don't prove anything when you file a complaint. Okay, now we're going to move into this term agreement when we're talking about landlord-tenant or any kind of contract. So an agreement is a meeting of two or more minds coming together in opinion. Let's see. I can't move this thing. An opinion or determination, coming together in accord of two minds to give a proposition. Okay, in law, concurred, I don't know, I guess I might have miswrote that word. I'll look that. Understanding and intention between two or more parties. A concurrence, probably. Okay, with respect to the effect upon their relative rights and duties. So when we look at it, and a meeting of two or more minds with the respect to effect upon their relative rights with the view of contracting an obligation, a mutual obligation. So an agreement is basically a contract. Two people come together and with respect to effect upon their relative rights and duties. Okay, very important. Okay, with this. So I'm getting some feedback. Okay, so a manifestation of mutual assent on the part of two or more persons as to the substance of a contract. That's what agreement is. Basically, the act of two or more persons who unite in expressing a mutual and common purpose with the view of altering their rights and obligations. So you see here now, they come together and to agree, and with the view of altering their rights and obligations, changing their rights and obligations. Say they're making rights and obligations and then they're changing them or what their obligations are. That's what an agreement is. You make agreements, that you make contracts. Now, we want to remember that. We'll get back to that, but I should have put this up above it. Justice. This is the problem with justice. What is justice? Justice is fairness. Justice is moral righteousness. Justice is a scheme or a system of law in which every person receives his or her due process from the system, including all rights, both natural and legal. Okay? That's what our system of government is set up to do, is give justice. That's why we have the rules of the court and the procedures. Now, within this definition, then they say there's one problem, is that attorneys, judges, legislatures often get caught up more in procedure than in achieving justice for all. And the adage, justice delayed is justice denied. It applies to the burdensome procedures, lack of sufficient courts, the clogging of the system with meritless cases, and the use of courts to settle matters which could be resolved by negotiation. So that's one of the elements of discovery, is where you go outside the court to settle. That's an important thing that the courts require. You settle outside of court. And that's what we like to do. And we remember that one problem is that lawyers, judges, and legislatures get caught up more in procedure than achieving justice. See, so they get caught up in all of that because they're making money. So they don't want to get to the justice, because if you just go right to the justice, you solve the problem. Well, then you don't go through all the procedures and all the court appearances and all the paperwork that you get paid for. So this is what the problem is in America with our justice system. Okay, and that's what I said in the beginning. We learn this, and so we make them, we get them into the negotiation outside of the court, and it still costs them the money to pay the lawyers they charge. So a lot of times we can win without going to court. So now when we get to the statutes regarding landlord and tenants in California, I found this statute here. It's a California Code of Civil Procedures, 1941. It says the leaser of a building intended for the occupation of human beings must, in absence of an agreement or contract, put it into a condition fit for such occupation, and repair and subsequent dilapidations, all subsequent dilapidations thereof, which render it untenable, except as mentioned in section 1929. Okay, so what does this say? This says if you're leasing a building intended for people to occupy, you must put it in a condition fit for that occupation, and you have to repair all subsequent dilapidations thereof. Okay, you have to do that, but look what it says in white here. In the absence of an agreement to the contrary. So what that means is when you have a rental agreement, a lease agreement, see, now you have an agreement, so you're not absent, and then you put in the contrary, which is in your agreement. You say the tenant is responsible for certain repairs. If you don't have that in your contract that they're required to do it, then it goes by this one. And this one says the leaser has to put it in condition and repair all the subsequent dilapidations. You see there? So it says that you can make a contract against the statute. If you don't have a contract, then you have to go by the statute. And that's why Article 1, Section 10 in the US Constitution, it says that no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. That means if you have a contract, the state can't interfere with it. Okay? So this is the most important thing for any landlord, is the writing of the lease agreement or the rental agreement. You have to write that first and get it proper so that the city and the county agencies can't interfere with that and say you have to follow their statutes. Say, because they're running the whole show now in Berkeley and all of San Francisco, and they say, oh, we have all these city laws, all these laws. Well, yeah, you have to follow all those laws if you don't have an agreement that's contrary to those laws. So when you write it, you can write it, this agreement is per Article 1, Section 10 of the US Constitution. And the counties and the cities and the states can't pass any law that impairs the obligation of that contract. And if the tenant said he would fix he agreed when he rented that he would fix the plumbing or fix whatever is agreed to, then he has to do that. If he doesn't do that, he's in violation of a contract. And if you're in violation of a contract, then you can get kicked out. See, so that's because the agreement was to dealing with rights and duties. So you put the rights and duties on the person that you guys both agreed to. Now the state can't come in, or the county can't come in with their laws. This is America. This is what freedom is, but it's freedom to make the contract. If you don't make that contract and you allow the state to interfere with it, then you didn't do it right. But the state does try to interfere with them anyway. So we have to understand and be ready for them to try to do that. But when you have a contract, it's a higher law than the statute. So you have a way better chance of getting the court to rule in your favor. Now, to do these things, and I think Ellen was going to show, and she did in the beginning, she went through the different websites that help us, that we can learn everything. And this one down there at the bottom, the self-help courts, and they have for eviction landlord to fill out. And this is what the complaint looks like if you're going to kick someone out. They have the form, and if you're not an attorney, you're your own attorney, then I think they require you to use this form, because this form has all the necessary elements. Okay, the key is what you put on the form. See, this is where we have to understand what we put on the form, because a lot of times the lawyers don't put the right stuff on the form, and then they get us into back and forth and keep the case going, and then it ends up who wins? The lawyers, for the lawyers' fees and the attorneys and the costs. So they'll mess it up a lot because they want the money, where if you are aware of what box to check, what is actually going on here, you can fill this out and have a complete cause of action and a complaint that's going to work because it's on the form. You fill out all the proper parts of the form and sign it. So they've done this a lot with the legal process. It's formed up. So when we understand law, we can just use their forms. And then everyone knows if it's on the form, then it means a lot. But sometimes you have to put in the right words on the form so that the judge understands and the attorneys understand that you know what you're talking about. And that's the key to the riddle. So, and that's going to be part of our classes when we get there. And I'll bring that up in a little later. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about Ellen and Zeke Common Law Sense Solutions. We call it the Easy Common Law Sense Solutions. And it's a private club. And we're unincorporated private membership for individuals who have accepted the 10 Amendments and the Bible and the 10 Amendments in the Constitution, the 10 Commandments in the Bible, excuse me, and the 10 Amendments in the US Constitution as our creed. Okay, and our goals is to help people to obtain peaceful and prosperous remedies, provide referrals, interpretation, education, and supportive services. And our job is to help you save headache and heart pains and money by exercising common sense law, which is natural law, which is from the Bible and from the Constitution. Okay, our foundation principles is when you join this club, all the members agree to operating under God's law and Bible principles and adhere to these principles for the benefit of all the members. And all members agree that the US Constitution is the supreme law of the land, which all the judges and lawyers do, by the way. And any advice, opinions, suggestions, or any other utterances shall not be construed as offensive or as legal advice. So we're talking and giving our opinion, and that's opinion, and we don't mean to be offensive if it comes across that way. This association is exclusive of all federal, state, county, city, municipal, administrative, and public jurisdictions and laws. Yeah, we're exclusive. We're not part of any of those state, federal, any of those jurisdictions of the public and any of those other laws that people have put together. Okay, and so our membership, we're here to support your individual needs. We provide education for you to understand your own needs and do it yourself. Okay, when we accept silver and US dollars, and we ask $138 per person per year, and we want you to let us know how we can be helpful to support your individual conflicts, situation, such as housing, shelter, food, employment, family, and any life needs. Okay. We help people translate and write letters at request. You provide the content and tell us what you need to communicate and the result you want to see. We respect your own decisions, and please ask us if you have a problem paying any fees. We encourage you to do things yourself, and we look for people and to look for people who know and do it for free. You know, we send you to go other places. We want you to get it done as best you can, but we do take donations and we need support. So all the transactions within our Easy Club are outside the credit system and are personal. You pay directly to him or her or the agency, or fees may vary. All fees are considered donations. We do referrals for interpretation and supportive services, and the price $35 for each proof of service plus $1 copy and costs of stamps according to letter size. And as a member each year, your first proof of service is free. $85 an hour for phone supportive and interpretive services. As a member each year, your first hour is free. $65 to $395 each page, depending on document size and the time spent on research, and $95 to $185 an hour for in-person support, education, interpretation, and a minimum charge may apply, but depends on location or the event or the length of the services. So we basically, we were asking for donations, you know, but we want people to help themselves, and then we want them to help us. So for donations, please donate for those who need to help but can't afford it. You can put in money for people that, you know, need help. You can email us at Zeke@powerpolitics.com. That's my email, and tell us how we can be helpful to you. And you can donate, and you can learn more about power politics education at thepowerpolitics.com, the website that Ellen showed us. You just type that in there, and I have my PayPal down there at the bottom for donations. And thank you very much for listening. And I think that's about it for this presentation. Did I miss anything?
Thank you, Zeke. No, you did real well, and according to your PowerPoint. I believe that for individual needs, we might open up for questions. The reason I have this outreach Zoom is for people to have clarification how they can be helpful to protect their own properties, because the current property laws do not allow them to collect their rent during this pandemic. And also many of the people did not know how to do letter writing instead of just look for a lawyer. I think this is the difficulty part for people when they have problems with their tenants.
Yes, the letter writing, and most important also is the agreement. Have to rewrite or amend your rental agreement so that it is fair to you, and you can get the tenant to agree. And now most rental agreements are only 30-day agreements. So if you start and give them notice over 30 days, then it starts the, you know, 1 or 2 months later, and now they have to sign that, and then they have to be in compliance with it. See, because you can change those terms, because the terms, if they were written years and years ago, all of the terms are in there written towards them, towards the tenant, and especially in the cities when they go by the Berkeley or the San Francisco, they have these laws, they call them. But those, when you write your contract and say, these laws don't apply in this instance, okay, they don't, you have to really think about to have to write it in, you know. But also we don't, we stay away from the money one. We don't, we go by their process of the money increases. See, that's one that we don't write out, but everything else we can, to get them to do more of the upkeep of their own place of living.
And maybe Zeke, we can open for questions. See if anybody had any individual questions.
No,
any questions from the participants?
No. And I just,
you know, a lot of times, you know, Chinese people are pretty quiet, or landlords don't want to be like publicly acknowledge a problem.
That's why I can say, I was going to say here on the screen. So we're having classes we can set up. If you want, if you're interested in having a class, then you should send an email to me or Ellen if you know her. And tell her that you're interested in taking one of these classes here. At the bottom, we got the general legal process and theory. We have the traffic tickets and defenses, and we have the unlawful detainer. See, now if you take this unlawful detainer class, then you can be really totally familiar a lot more than where you are now. Unless you are familiar and you need a specific question, that's okay too. Then you can, you know, send us the question or ask us for help. And you know, this is just an opportunity to ask a question if you have one or want to, but you can also write it down and send it to me or Ellen.
Your email, maybe the previous slide had your email address in there.
Yeah, down here at the
Right
bottom, Zeke@powerpolitics.com.
So maybe the previously I explained that tonight's Zoom is because I am in the Chinese and Asian community facing a lot of landlords having problems with their tenants who are refused to cooperate when they not paying rent on time, when they have an issue, or when they want to evict them. Things are like that. And I realized there's a lot more people than I can handle or I know of. So I invite Zeke tonight to talk about common law. As long as you know the basic language, English, how to defend yourself and your rights, and you do not have to get a lawyer, so to speak. You can file a lawsuit on your own behalf. You can interpret the law if when you know what the law means to you. So my understanding, the law is coming from natural law. The natural law is coming from the Bible.
Just to interrupt you a little bit, I see a question.
Okay, well, answer the question then.
Well, she has to unmute to answer it. It's Minish. I can't. Yeah. Minish. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm pretty sick. But I just saw this meeting, so I decided to join. I think a lot of Asian people are facing this issue, but unfortunately, I just got this message from Vicky. She posted on the Chinese Patreon group chat. So I tried to forward to all of the Chinese community right now, but it seems too late because it's already 8 o'clock. I don't know if you guys gonna arrange another one, or that's I know you have record, so that's something we can share later. Definitely, people really want to know about this. This is really a big issue.
Okay, well, yeah, we will record it and they can show it, and then people can either email me. You can take my email down, Zeke@powerpolitics.com, and if you know Ellen, you can email her. And so have them email, because she said there's a lot of people that are interested. And then when we get enough people, we can give a class, or if individuals need help, they can call me. I have my phone number here too let me get to that.
If you, the people understand the situation, it's because many of the Chinese and Asian landlords, they are so afraid when they receive a court paper from any lawyer, from any of their residents. And in the situation, you do not have to be afraid. You just have to understand the court process by dealing the problem upfront, instead of you go look for a lawyer or an attorney right away. They charge you so much money, but they're not able to get things done. This is the common area that I've seen for the last 5 years in the Chinese community. So that's why that we have this Zoom meeting. If you're late, that's fine. We're gonna record this and we're gonna host it and put it in there, and for people to come back and explain what common law is and what constitutional law is. The very basic one that we understand, that common law is the natural law, and natural law coming from the Bible, and the United States Constitution is directly with a lot of wordings is from the Bible. So that's why.
And we get there through the process. We follow the rules of the process to get there. We have another question too. Okay, can we take that?
Hi, this is am I the one? Maina Young.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hello.
yeah, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Ellen and Zach, for putting this together. It's great eye opener. At least, to show us some words that we don't normally come across.
Good. Was there anything you had a question or just a comment?
Have you faced?
We
Maybe
couldn't
I'm-
hear your question. I think your question get on and off muted. Can you restart your question again, Mina?
Okay, my question is, Zach, can you give an example of, a dispute between a landlord and tenant that you might come across?
Well, yeah, I've come across a few. I've been a tenant a lot of times, and I was getting kicked out of my house or my apartment, and I learned how to drag out the case for 6 months. But I knew in the end, the owner owns the property and they have the right to do with their property what they want, right? In the end, I mean, that's the beginning and the end. It's their property. But recently we've had cases where the landlord now wants to get the tenant out. Okay, but the lawyer screws up and costs them a fortune and then loses the case, and now they're stuck. Okay, so then the remedy, as I was saying, is every 30 days, most of these, it's not, if it's not a 2-year lease or a 10-year lease or something, but the 30 days you can amend a rental agreement, and then you put in a contract, an agreement, that the tenant has more responsibility in regard to upkeep, for example. And even in this one case, the contract does require the individual the tenant to take care of the place and is responsible for damage. See, and you just have to hold them accountable. And the defense, when we said, hey, we wrote a letter, said, hey, you're breach of contract. But first, the tenant wrote a letter, said that the landlord had to fix all this stuff. But when we looked at the contract, it said that the tenant had to do it. Okay, so now there's a disagreement. Now it's going to have to go to court, very possibly. And so when we go to court, we're going to use that form that I put up there and go through that process and list the violations of the breach of contract that the tenant's doing. This isn't where we don't say he's not paying rent. If he's not paying rent, and if he's not paying rent, you got to prove that. A lot of times, I think that, well, in this one case, it's a lady in San Francisco, and she's Chinese, and she didn't understand that the tenant was paying the rent, but to his lawyer to hold, because she wouldn't accept the money. So when she says he's not paying rent, well, he was paying rent. See, so there's a misunderstanding or not really knowing how the system works, because you can pay rent into what they call escrow. It's someone else to hold the rent for you, but it's being paid. Because if you don't pay the rent, you get kicked out. And whether then they had this deal going with COVID, well, that was happening around the country, but in 2020, right after it started, there was a lady down in San Diego who filed a lawsuit, and she was a landlord. And she filed a lawsuit and she sued the judicial council. And she said, hey, it's my property and I have the right to kick someone out for not paying rent or for whatever. and they don't get to not pay rent just because there's a pandemic. And that ruling came out and she won. So a lot of these, the laws they say and the way they say it has going on wasn't really happening. And again, even in other areas of where the vaccine and people had got fired from their jobs. Well, that was totally unconstitutional. And now we're going to see it turn around, but it's going to take 2-3 years. This is the problem with the justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. But if we get in there and the sooner we get in and recognize it, and the clearer that we explain it to the judges and show them, then the better chance we have. But it's really unbelievably corrupt, you know. But also the laws technically usually have always been in favor of the landlord. But now in Berkeley and San Francisco, there's so much liberal stuff that, you know, and the lawyers are just taking advantage of everything. You know, then the judges look the other way and no one speaks up too. See, a lot of the people in the community, they don't have someone to speak up for them, and the lawyer lies and doesn't speak up for them. And I know that's totally frustrating, and that's why, you know, we've always been, when I grew up, we had a saying called, "If you want something done, do it yourself." And we, you know, it's unbelievable. We can't rely on any of our representatives. We can't rely on the attorneys. We can't rely on anybody but ourselves. And that's why groups are forming. That's what this is about. This is how Americans do it. We get together and we follow the law. We go for justice. That's one of the biggest things that we have. And that's one of the biggest things that's being violated now. And it's a big rally. That's why we follow God. We fear God and we trust God, because that's what God's number one thing is, in our opinion, is justice, you know, fairness, because everybody should have this right to be, you know, treated with the same due process. And that's the foundation of America. So really, again, it's gain knowledge. My people perish for lack of knowledge. And so we have to take the initial step that a lot of Americans don't, is, you know, do it yourself, go learn.
Zach, I got another question from one of the person
Okay.
that I encountered today.
Okay.
So this is a landlord bought a new building, and the building is less than 1 year. You know, a new landlord, less than a year, and as she tried to raise the rent has not been raised for about 5 years from the previous owner.
Right.
And so she tried to raise rent. I believe it's about $30 or $35, but the tenants refuse to pay. What can the landlord do?
Well, what if you have to serve the notice of the increase, the amendment of the increase in rent, and $25 is within. You look at your, you can go and look at the, you know, San Francisco or all these, whatever they call them, their, you know, rental deals, and they allow you to raise the rent, but only 10%. Okay, so when you raise the rent, you put it in, they don't pay, then you give notice. You have to give a notice. Now, if they've been in there for over a year, then you have to give them, well, you first do a 3-day notice to pay the rent or quit. And if they don't pay it, and, you know, pay it to, then you give them what's called a 60-day notice. You have to give them a 60-day notice to start the eviction process, because they've lived there so long. You know, over a year, it's 60, under a year, it's 30 days, but 60 days. And then you'll fill out that unlawful detainer form and kick them out. And then the new person that comes in, you can start with the you know, going rent in the contract, the high rent. You know, rents are high in San Francisco. But a lot of these people are only paying $500 a month because they've been there so long.
So this is another question. It's a reality of question. So this a person lived there for about 15 years, one person, but now have another person, which is get married, so a wife. And the garage is included. However, this person who lived there using the garage as a storage room, that create a lot of nuisance and hazards, like garbage, corporate papers, instead of the car to park in there. What can the landlord do?
A perfect example. Okay, what can the landlord do? Now so we have to look at the agreement. We always look to the agreement. Is it a month-to-month agreement? If it's a month-to-month agreement, then you amend the rental agreement to say that the garage is not part of the deal, or it's part of the deal and you can't do certain things. See, because if it's a nuisance, you're going to have to prove it's a nuisance. This is what these lawyers are doing. Then because I bet if I look at that contract, they got attorney's fees in there. And then they're going to go to court and run the attorney's fees up, and then the defendants, the lawyer's not going to be able to prove it's a nuisance. And then they're going to have the defense is going to be a pro bono group, right? Poor people that they don't have to pay an attorney, and they're going to run their charges way up, and then the landlord's going to have to pay for the nuisance stuff. So I would just not even bother with that. Just take the time to amend the complaint, and then if they violate the agreement, then you kick them out based upon the violation of the agreement, not that they're a nuisance.
All right.
You see? Because it's too hard to prove a nuisance.
You're right.
But you can prove breach of contract.
Yes.
That's why contract's the most important. And a lot of these people may be able to rewrite it in 30 days and then get big step ahead because they don't know what to do. This is what you do. You rewrite the contract first. You don't go suing and kick them out. And then you have to do notice. There's a process of giving the notice to the tenant, because everybody needs notice and time to respond. Okay, good. Yeah. Well, tell your friends, and we'll put it up on YouTube and maybe Patreon, and spread the word. And you see here on this page, my email is there, my phone number is there, and the website is there. And so we want everybody to more, and when you have this knowledge and you learn words, then you can create a question. See, a lot of people don't have enough information to even know what to ask. This is how it starts. So we have to get familiar. You want to learn this stuff. You want to pretend like you're a landlord if you're not. And you also want to look at the side of the tenant. Your daughter, your sister, they may be tenants, so you learn both sides. So you see how it works. And then you learn the little advantages you can play when you play this game. It's just a game.
Well, you have been very helpful in giving us information on common law. It is important for landlords to know, and or even tenants to know their own rights, are protected by the Constitution. The lawyers, definitely, in my experience, they are not the best to defend yourself. You are your own best to defend yourself that I know of. Yeah.
And we ask questions of everybody. We ask lawyers questions, and then we decide if they're giving us bullshit or not. But we ask questions. We ask questions of anybody to find information. A lot of people have information that aren't professionals that are. But we know that a lot of these professionals, they misguide us. They don't tell us the truth a lot. But so we have to be aware that the key is awareness, understanding the words, and understanding the process. And then we can move forward to go in any direction that we choose.
Sounds good.
Good.
So, and another question, Zach,
Mhm.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Oakland just passed a new ordinance that if a tenant owes less than 1 month of rent based on the HUD standard. I don't know, you know what HUD is, the
Yes, I do.
housing authority. Then you cannot evict based on that 1 month rent owed. So is that constitutional?
Well, of course not. But we don't even need to go to the Constitution, because when we go to the statutes of the California Code of Civil Procedure 1941, see, it says that just what you said there, the HUD is going to make a rule, okay, and then they're going to say that you can't kick them out if they're on 1 month behind or something. But
Well, this is, sorry, yeah, what they're saying is that the 1 month rent is based on what the HUD states for that size of an apartment, but it's not a HUD tenant, you understand? So
oh, okay.
is the, yeah, so.
So when
that's
you
what
say
it-
1 month,
Yeah, but the way they set up how much rent is okay to owe,
oh,
that amount is based on what HUD's standard amount for that, let's say 1 bedroom apartment.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So now what I would do is I would have to read exactly what it says.
Mhm.
You told me, and I believe you, but I would analyze the language.
Mhm.
Okay, and then I would, now we know that if the contract is month to month, right? So
Yeah, it could be in contract.
you in the contract, they're usually month to month. You pay your rent, and the rent has to be paid within 5 days, right?
Mhm.
So you can only owe that money for 5 days. Now you're telling me that the HUD is saying it could be more days?
Yeah, Oakland
Okay,
is saying you can
Okay.
owe for a month, and yeah.
right. Well, see, so when what we would write it, they're going to go by Oakland unless there's an agreement to the contrary. So we would specifically write in the contract that it's 5 days, and
Right.
you can only owe $10.
Mhm.
And we write that in, and that would be against what HUD said, but which one would be the highest law? Our contract or the HUD's trying to impair the obligation of the contract?
Mm.
And that's why it's unconstitutional, because no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. So that's why we have to put it in our contract that it's only $10 for 5 days can be owed.
Mm. Wow.
So you see?
Interesting. Okay.
Good. Yeah, you got that. That's very powerful thing here, because then
Thank you.
we just write it in, and
Mhm.
it the next month and a half, then it comes into fruition, and then they don't get to come in and run the country. We run it by our own contract,
Wow.
the agreement. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now you see, you got it. And this is what everyone that's a renter, a landlord needs to get. Once you get that, boom. I mean, whose property is it?
Mm.
How can someone come in and say, oh, well, I'm going to say that these guys can live in the garage now, because, we like them, and you're a rich landlord.
Maybe Zach, I can give an example. So Maynard, you know how Chinese landlord, right? They don't know the law. So when they move in a family or person, they only put something in Chinese, like you pay me rent within 5 days, we split the utility, and you're not allowed to use the garage. You know, one page,
Mhm.
no social security number and only the name and no ID and very simple. So that's the Chinese way, okay? However, in California, you and I know that the corporate landlords, they have 35 pages as a contract. And in the little fine prints that you as the tenants the tenants has to pay all those legal costs. So that's the difference. I believe that a lot of Chinese landlords did not know. However, whatever the contract between the rentee and the renter, it's law. It's the law and the contract. I think that's what Zeke was saying about it's a contract between two parties, and it's a private party and a private contract that the state, which is the government, has no business to interfere with that contract, whatever the contract they agree on.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's right. As long as
Well,
it's illegal.
so San Francisco has another statute, ordinance that they say it doesn't matter how many roommates you state in the agreement. Let's say you say I'm only renting to 3 people who are signed here, and then but the ordinance actually says the state has a different standard for how many people can be allowed based on the area of
Right,
the house.
right. That's right.
And so is that overriding the contract by saying that?
Well, I have to read the contract. So what I'm hearing is we have to write our contract with more specificity and say that that we agree that even though there's this amount of space, we're going to only rent to these people. And then when you have what they call subtenants, okay,
Right. People do that.
then we have to put in the contract that anytime there's another subtenant, that the tenants that are there must notify the landlord within 5 days. Okay, so that within 5 days. So then the landlord can rewrite the agreement to include these people, and then then we just work the contract the way we work it, so that they won't be able to be doing that. Say, I have to read the wording.
Oh, Zeke, I think Mayna's question is that San Francisco had a law that is passed that the landlord has no business to reject the tenants who are leasing the place. For example, when they lease in, could be 1 or 2 people. Now, because of certain situation, they allow other people to come in without their names on the contract. Is that what you're asking, Mayna?
Right. They actually can bring in more people outside of the family. I mean, that's another thing. Some of them.
Okay.
So the contract was 2 people. Now it's 8 people. And the government says you have no saying whether how many people, whether 10 or 12, it's their right to have people. So the question is, do they have the saying? The government.
Yeah, but they're saying it's based on the size of the apartment, not
right. But again, does the agreement say
so
that
if they say, okay, 3 people are by standard allow in a 1-bedroom apartment, but when I sign the contract, the agreement only rented to 1 person, let's say. But now they say, oh, because the law say this 1-bedroom apartment can allow 3, so I bring in 2 more people, and you really can't refute that.
Okay, so that's why I said, now if I go to the contract that I wrote, right, and said, that I'm renting to one person and there's 300 square feet. So, I mean, let's just say whatever it is. So two more could come in, right? So I say, I'm renting to you. And if you allow any more tenants, if you allow any more tenants to come into that, then that will breach this contract here. And you will be in breach of contract if you allow it to any more tenants to come in. Do you agree to that? And sign it? Because if you don't sign that, then I'm not renting to you. And if you don't sign it and take it in a month or two, and you don't agree to that, then now I'm going to kick you out because you're not agreeing to the contract. It's only a 30-day contract. This ain't a contract for life. This ain't a contract to allow other people in. But here's the thing. Does the contract that is there now today say that they can't let more people in? If it doesn't say that, then they're going to allow it, because you have to have a contract. Okay, you have to have that contract there. Otherwise, the statute's going to apply. The statute applies in the absence of an agreement to the contrary. Okay, so does the agreement say that they can't bring in two more? If it doesn't say it, then they can't. Then they're gonna make them come in. Again, back to the contract. So the contract has to be written totally specifically against what HUD said. See, because remember, they can't impair the obligation of a contract, so we're back to the contract. Okay, there's another question from
so while you guys talking about the landlord's right, I was just curious. I remember there was a law. I'm not quite sure if the bill passed yet, but the bill was talking about the landlord cannot check the background for tenant. Is that against the Constitution?
No, anyone can investigate anything they want to.
So if that bill passed, then that means we couldn't do that.
Oh, yeah, but that bill is not passing. That's unconstitutional bill. That's like saying, okay, you can't go investigate me. What do you mean? I can investigate anybody I want. You know, that's why we have these privacy rules, and people don't, you know, let out your information. But they can't make a law against me asking. It's all public. I could go to website. I go to Facebook.
Right.
Most landlords do. You can't not say I can't go to Facebook.
Yeah, you are right. I just learned that we actually lacking the knowledge about Constitution, the basic law. So a lot of people got tracked by a lot of issue that the corrupt Senate or Congress, they are making bill to against our right. So it's very confusion for people and get nervous that what we can do.
Well, we can't believe how corrupt they all are. We knew they were corrupt, but we didn't know they were corrupt right in our face. Corrupt. Okay, well, then that's what they're doing with this HUD stuff, corruption, because all we got to do is write our contract. So we put it in. Everything that you're telling me, I'm thinking, oh, okay, I better make sure that's in the contract. So I make sure that's it. Oh, no, you can't have more than 2 subtenants. If you do, you better notice me, and it's a breach of this contract, and you will be evicted. If you let 2 or more subtenants in there, you'll be evicted because you didn't tell me. If you don't tell me, because I need to get them to sign this agreement too. And when they don't follow any one of these agreements, then they get kicked out.
So you mean for the contract, when the landlord with tenant contract, cannot be override with state laws. Or
That's right.
that's good to know.
That's great to know. Believe me, that's what a lot of people, Americans don't know that. People don't know that. They've been brainwashed totally. Yeah, that's right. That's it. And then the fear comes in. Really? Is that really the way it is? Well, yeah, that's the way it is. If you study our history, that's what they fought the war for. The Revolutionary War, people died for this right, the right to contract. You know, and when you understand how the Constitution was written, this Article 1, Section 10 can't impair the obligation of a contract. We have the right to freedom to contract and make a deal that no one can interfere. You know, why don't I come along and say, hey, you know what? And everybody that rents over there, everybody that rents, I want $20 from every room that's rented. Yeah, can I do that? I want $20. I can say it. That's what the HUD's doing, saying it. Whatever they're saying, they're controlling. They can say what they want. I don't have to comply. But I'll tell you what, when they do, a lot of people comply with them. You know, the IRS sends out a bills that are not valid at all and just says, hey, you owe us $700 or $800. And you know what? A businessman, he's going to pay it, whether he owes it or not. He's going to pay it because to fight it, it's going to cost him $8,000. Because you don't know how to fight it. Going to learn how on the fly. That's how we did. We started doing it. If we'd have known beforehand and came to these classes and studied and understood and learned from other people's experience, then it wouldn't have been so hard. But you know, trying to change in the midstream while they're coming at you and right in the middle of a violation. That's why I say, you know, don't bother with this nuisance stuff. If your contract has a attorney fees agreement in there, because they're just going to milk you. But if there's no money for the attorneys, they're not going to do anything. Yep. Then we can just the knowledge of these few key points.
Yeah, definitely. I will bring more people to for next time. If you guys have this kind of meeting, definitely I will bring more people because I'm trying to implement a lot of constitution or biblical citizenship class. People, we as an immigrant, we don't know those things. It's very sad that we're losing our rights and we don't even know. And the purpose we move here is just for the freedom, but now we are losing freedom too.
That's right. That's 100%. And that's why. So when you get people, try to get them to commit to taking one of this class here that can do the unlawful detainer or the general legal process, because we're going to cover both just basics, and then on the unlawful detainer, we'll go through stuff like we're talking about, you know, and answer all the questions. But if we have, you know, 3, 4, 5 people, then it'll be worth it to do the class. But we want to get probably, you know, 4 or 5 people that'll commit so that we can, you know, meet, you know, and get the donations, you know, just so I can make a little bit of money. Yeah. So, you know, I don't know if you guys know how to take a screenshot. Can take a screenshot of this one and then this one here, the bottom.
Maybe go to the first slide. It has your phone number and your website. So people can email you for individual questions or help that they encounter.
Yeah. There it is right there, everything.
Hey, Zeke, I'm grateful for the training. You know, I learned so much about, you know, more and more common law, natural law.
Good. That's good for me. I really appreciate it when you just say that. That's worth a lot to me. All of you that have mentioned it, that when you learn something, I like that. That makes me feel good, and then we can proceed and we can share it and other people, and yeah, it's powerful. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Yeah, we
Thank
learned a
you.
lot. Very powerful.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay,
All
so-
right. Good night.
All right. Good night.
Thank you.
We're gonna
Thank
end
you.
in here. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Ellen. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye. Bye.